Committee Room 21. Sound.
That's okay. Okay, we're starting public session now just. So thank you. Just to remind you, meetings are recorded and broadcast throughout Parliament buildings. Nobody in the public gallery. We do have your declaration of interest from the first meeting, members. If there are any new declaration of interest today, just please remember to
Chair. Chair, just there's an issue about Delran today.
Yes.
And the simple fact that I have previously written to the PAC about the lack of progress on this, it may be
okay.
In order to declare an interest.
That's fine. Thank you for that. Okay, have we any apologies? Anya Murphy has indicated she'll be slightly late.
Just yet, should be here.
No other apologies? No, thank you. Okay, agenda item 2, Chair's business. Just to note the forward work programme in the pack this week. There will be an updated version in next week's pack. The committee team have been successful in booking 2 external meetings before the summer recess. We'll be visiting Caffrey Greenmount College on Thursday the 13th of June, and in addition to the usual business, we will be briefed by Caffrey and we will see the dairy herd, which demonstrates best practice and the use of new technology. On the 27th of June we will hold our meeting in Kilkeel Harbour, and there are now dates firmed up for September and October to hold meetings and visits to Clandyboy Estate and the National Trust at Mount Stewart. More details will follow on those. Just to note, members, that the clerk had a phone call yesterday from an individual who had been forwarded on to her from Rivers Agency regarding a proposed solution to a river problem. He mentioned the Ballinderry area in particular, and he wishes the committee to consider the possibility of gated steel fences along fishing rivers and fishermen to have keys to access the riverside. I'm not so sure that that's an issue for our committee, members. And I don't know, I'm assuming that would be a landowner, and along with I don't know why Rivers Agency have passed them on to us, to be fair. But is there anything that members want to comment on that? No? Okay, thanks. Okay, members, agenda item 3, draft minutes of the 23rd of May 2024.
Apologies, if I could just take us back a moment with your permission.
Yeah.
On the Clondalkin River or Rivers issue. Can we clarify, was this a river protection? I'm conscious that Rivers Agency are infrastructure and therefore not ours for consideration, but also I'm thinking, is there any element of the letter that might be the responsibility of DAERA Inland Fisheries? Because in that case, we might be bound to respond in one way or another.
I think the problem, John, was this person didn't leave their name and refused to give their name. The clerk asked to send in maybe an email to clarify just the issues that they were suggesting, which we thought would be helpful. It might allow us to take it forward, but I just think without that information, if that's fair enough.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they declined to send an email.
Yeah. So it's still open for them to send in that information if they so wish, but they declined. Okay. Okay, members, back to agenda item 3, the draft minutes of the 23rd of May 2024 in the packs of pages 6 to 15. Are there any comments? Are you content to sign?
Yep.
Great, thank you. Agenda item 4 is matters arising. Matters arising 1. Refer you to the response from the department dated 24th of May 2024, pages 17 to 20 of your pack. It's in response to the letter of the 10th of May 2024 requesting clarification of the level of accountability of the UK Emissions Trading Scheme accredited verifiers. The response notes that although there is no requirement on the UK Emissions Trading Scheme accredited verifiers to have a physical office in the UK, or to be a legal entity registered in the UK, the verifier is required to be registered with the United Kingdom Accreditation Service appointed by the government. All Northern Ireland stationary installations will participate in the UK scheme. Currently have their emissions verified by companies which have a registered UK office. And it gives the three there. Northern Ireland registered aviation operators currently use two verification companies. One is based in the United Kingdom as above, and the other in Paris. Accordingly, should the register, that is NIEA, have any concern over the work undertaken by a verifier, consideration can be given to reporting the verifier to the accreditation body for investigation. This has not yet been necessary. That was a query, and I can't remember who raised that.
It was me, Chair.
I think it was Patsy, is right? Yeah.
Well, I suppose if NIA are happy, sure, we should be happy then.
Okay.
I hope.
Content enough?
Well,
Right, members, thank you. Next matter arising is correspondence from the Department dated 23rd of May. It's in pages 21 to 27 of your pack regarding the EU emissions trading scheme and the scope expansion consultation package. It's now intending to split the publication of these consultations into two release dates. Two of the consultations are now ready for publication, which is the UK emissions trading scheme scope expansion waste and the integrating greenhouse gas removals in the UK emissions trading scheme. Appendix A outlines the summary of the policy positions contained within these two consultations, which the UK Scheme Authority intend to publish shortly. These will be followed in the near future by two further consultations on proposals to expand the scheme to the domestic maritime sector from 2026. Are you contented? Yep. Thank you. Next item, I refer you to the response from the Department dated 28th of May 2024 in your packet, pages 28 to 30. This is in response to our letter of the 10th of May 2024 regarding the inshore vessel monitoring systems financial package. The Department is considering how best to utilise the 2024 budget allocation to support the needs of the maritime and fisheries sector. The Department will now commence a programme of work to determine the most suitable devices for the Northern Ireland fleet and maximise its allocation, and finalise the levels of funding that will be made available for the owners, each under 12 metre vessels, to avail of the scheme. Once this has been confirmed, the Department will provide an update to the committee. I think, Michelle, was you raised that?
Yeah, I did. I suppose the concern that I have is that obviously this is a government intervention, and we're asking fishermen then obviously to have these devices, but in the first instance obviously they're going to be supplied. There's going to be a grant for supplying, but then thereafter for replacement and maintenance then falls again on the fishermen. So, and again, I suppose just very conscious of the fact that the costs associated with fishing are massive, and this is just again another burden.
So I think it's basically saying here that they haven't that worked out yet. The finance is not reasonable.
That's right, but I suppose it's about just sort of taking that into consideration, sort of the longer term additional costs that this will be for the fishermen.
Okay. So we're happy to wait till they come back to us. All right, members, thank you. Next matter arising is correspondence dated 28th of May 2024 in your packet, pages 31 to 33. This is a copy of Minister Muir's reply to the Chair of the Committee for Economy regarding his query on revising utility regulator Fairies, consumer protection and net zero. That was really just a copy. Olsena, you content to note? Okay. Next matter arising is in pages 3 to 4 of your table papers in reply to our letter of the 17th of May 2024 regarding travelling to Northern Ireland with pets. The Department has confirmed that as of the 23rd of May 2024 the information contained on the DAERA website is accurate in relation to the current requirements to travel with a pet from GB to Northern Ireland. members, I checked that website myself following a constituent query just, and even though the department has confirmed that the advice is up to date, to my mind it's not clear, because it indicates at one place that there are procedures you have to meet, but then in another place it says there will be no checks. So it's slightly confusing in that respect, and it doesn't take much just to give it a bit of clarity. But anyway, John, sorry.
Yeah, Chair, thank you. And like yourself, I was checking that website as recently as this morning before I came here, following up on a constituency query. In fact, not the same one as yours. Likewise, I was unclear, for example, whether or not a person bringing 2 dogs in for an event would or would not require certification or a pet passport, because there's repeated and detailed, in fairness, explanation of 5 dogs or more or 6 dogs or more, but less to say if a person coming into a dog show, for example, and was bringing 2 dogs, and the distinction there was not clear at all. So clarification on the numbers of dogs, whatever the number, including smaller numbers coming in for an event or a show, I think would be useful. Hopefully maybe the committee could ask for clarification on that as well, and a suggestion that the website could be updated accordingly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Members, are you happy that we receive further or seek further clarification on those particular issues? All right, any other points on that? No. Thank you. And members, are you content that we write back to the individuals that contacted us about that as well, just to say what we're doing? Okay. All right, members, we move on to agenda item 5, which is the briefing from the Department on the Marine Plan for Northern Ireland and an update on the draft policies. I refer you to following papers in your pack. The briefing from the Department dated 24th of May at pages 34 to 40. Annex A is the Modified Marine Plan of May 2024, pages 41 to 278. And Annex B is the indicative timeline for the adoption processes for the Northern Ireland Marine Plan at page 279. Okay, so members, we have department officials. We have Owen Little, Colin Armstrong and Johnny McNeil, is that right? Okay, so you're very welcome, and we'll ask you to give up to 10 minutes of an oral briefing, at which I hope you'll take some questions then.
Chair, thanks very much. Thank you for the opportunity to brief the committee on the Marine Plan for Northern Ireland. I'm joined today, I'm Owen Little, Director, Marine and Fisheries Division. I'm joined to my left by Colin Armstrong, Deputy Director, Policy and Legislation within the division, and then Johnny McNeil, who's a Senior Marine Planner, and they will hopefully be able to give some clarity if there's any more technical detail. As well as meeting the Department's statutory requirements under the Marine Act Northern Ireland 2013 and the Marine and Coastal Access Act 2009, the development and implementation of the Marine Plan represents a vital opportunity to facilitate the sustainable development and protection of the Northern Ireland marine area. The Marine Plan reflects the unique character of the Northern Ireland marine area and the needs of its users. Our marine area is sometimes overlooked, with the focus predominantly being on land and land-based activities. However, a marine area, which includes the territorial seas and exclusive economic zone adjacent to Northern Ireland, represents approximately 1/3 of our natural resource and area. The coast and the marine area support an exceptional diversity of marine wildlife and their habitats. They include highly productive and biologically diverse ecosystems with features which serve as critical natural defences against storms, floods and erosion, all of which are increasing in occurrence and intensity as part of the changing climate that we're experiencing. This dynamic area supports the marine economy and provides social benefits through activities and uses such as commercial fishing, aquaculture, renewable energy, shipping, recreation, tourism and heritage. It directly contributes to the quality of life and well-being of communities, especially coastal communities, through access to and enjoyment of the marine area. The Marine Plan vision is a marine area which is managed sustainably for the economic, environmental and social prosperity of present and future generations. This is a vision that everyone I think can support and work towards. The cross-cutting nature of the Marine Plan and its ability to influence a wide range of cross-cutting policy areas provides a framework and an opportunity for joined-up and cohesive decision-making and the chance to contribute to delivery of key outcomes for citizens across Northern Ireland. Marine planning is about finding the space for key activities to thrive, while at the same time ensuring our seas are healthy and resilient by focusing on the promotion of development that is sustainable. The Marine Plan does not specifically promote or prioritise particular activities in any particular area. Rather, it sets out the economic, environmental and social considerations that should be considered by public authorities in making decisions. Successful marine planning means that activities in the limited marine area can coexist, and the impacts of different activities on each other and on the environment will be properly taken into account and managed consistently. The Marine Plan has been a material consideration decision-making since the draft plan was published for consultation in 2018, and the modifications made as a result of the public consultation and more recently to reflect the current policy and legislative context have been incorporated into the version that we have provided you with. The modified Marine Plan complements and will support the delivery of national and regional policies and strategies, including some of those currently being considered, such as the draft Environmental Improvement Plan, the draft Green Growth Strategy, the draft Nature Recovery Strategy, the draft Blue Carbon Action Plan, and of course the Energy Strategy. The plan also promotes sustainable economic development within a healthy, functioning marine ecosystem, but the plan alone cannot be solely responsible for delivering sustainable development. All public authorities have a role. Marine users, including decision makers and regulators, applicants for authorisations and interested persons should find that the Marine Plan provides transparency and greater certainty on Northern Ireland's marine priorities. The draft Marine Plan has already had a positive influence on decision making, and an adopted Marine Plan will provide greater certainty and up-to-date position on all key policy areas. In this way, prospective developers and investors should have more confidence to proceed with individual proposals regarding the acceptability of activities along with appropriate locations and considerations. The Marine Plan also sets out the importance of encouraging coexistence and how potential impacts should be considered. This will be particularly relevant to issues relating to the use of the marine area, for example, offshore renewable energy and current fishing activity. And this is a pertinent example. The energy strategy sets Northern Ireland a target of 1 gigawatt of energy from offshore wind by 2030. Meeting this target will require careful planning and a recognition of spatial squeeze for other sectors, especially commercial fishing. The Marine Plan provides a framework to guide decision makers through that process. In practice, this will be achieved principally by using the mitigation hierarchy of avoid, minimise, mitigate to manage spatial squeeze. For example, in guiding offshore wind into areas of least constraint, such as in avoiding fishing spawning in nursery grounds, associated habitats and migratory routes when considering where a wind farm might be situated. Marine decision planners should also feel more confident decisions made on applications for projects will be robust in the face of challenge, provided they are made in accordance with the policies, vision and objectives of the Marine Plan for Northern Ireland. This is because the Marine Plan is underpinned by and requires proposals to be accompanied by the best available technical and scientific evidence. It also places an emphasis on early and effective engagement with stakeholders and a balanced approach to decision making. The Marine Plan is supported by a publicly accessible marine map viewer, which shows the activities and the uses that occur in the Northern Ireland marine area. This online facility displays a comprehensive set of map data, including economic, environmental and social data relating to the Northern Ireland marine area. It identifies existing activities and uses and thereby potential sensitivities and constraints to support proposals. It is updated as and when new evidence becomes available. We are now approaching an important decision point in the Marine Plan development process. The issues raised by respondents have been incorporated into the plan, and the introductory and explanatory sections and the range of policies in the plan have all been reviewed and refreshed. As set out in your cover note, there are now 3 strategic policies: sustainable development, climate change and achieving good environmental status, which seek to ensure decisions are made in accordance with the required strategic direction. In addition, an update of the associated assessments to plan is underway to reflect all amendments to the policies. Article 13 of the Marine and Coastal Access Act 2009 sets out that DAERA must consider independent investigation where any representations about proposals in the consultation draft remain unresolved. Given the extensive work post-consultation to take into account these representations and amend the consultation draft accordingly, the Department does not consider that an independent investigation is required. Of course, we would welcome the Committee's views on this position once you've considered the plan. The Marine Plan will come into effect when it's published in its final form adopted. The aim is to publish the plan before the end of 2024 when all approvals are in place, and we welcome the Committee's comments and questions on the modified plan. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Owen, for that distinct summary. Can I ask just about the offshore? Are there areas zoned within the plan? I'm thinking you did briefly touch on it there about spawning of fish and that, because I'm conscious that sometimes if you have offshore renewable energy, that it may not sit very well with fishing areas. So I'm just wondering, are there areas zoned for renewables or areas zoned for fishing?
And as I alluded in the opening comments, I think this is why the Marine Plan is very important, because it's recognised just not for Northern Ireland, but across the United Kingdom and Ireland and Europe, the increasing spatial squeeze for all marine activities, and I think offshore renewables and fishing activities is probably one of the most sensitive. So, Johnny, just on the detail of the, are there zones in the plan, or what's the plan for that?
No, there are not zones prescribed at the minute in terms of where those areas would be. There would be evidence that we would expect those making decisions to go and look through to get the best evidence to underpin where the important fishing areas, the spawning migratory routes are. And the thrust of the policies is to ensure that we direct people through their development of proposals to ensure that they are able to coexist with existing activities in the sea.
Okay, so it's fairly open, is it, for fishing at the moment, but there are certain areas that fishermen would know there's no point in going to because there'll be no fish there. Is that reasonable?
Well, what I would say, Chair, is I think this is important why everybody involved in the marine area understands the plan and understands how they can actually use a plan to underpin their activity and then make sure they make those representations to public authorities. And a lot of this is about the evidence and continually update the evidence. I mentioned the map viewer. It's essential that we get more and more evidence to actually making those informed decisions. And I think part of the issue we might have had in the past is that for fishing activity, particularly inshore fishing activity, it was very hard to record what the level and intensity of a fishing activity was, because I listened earlier about the IVMS being mentioned. Part of that, those records will actually increase that evidence for fishers in the future, notwithstanding the issues of finance. But those sort of systems will actually strengthen particular stakeholders' cases when it comes to these major decisions.
John, Blair.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you, Owen, as well, and your colleagues. A couple of questions. The first one, fairly obvious one, I suppose. I realise you explained there that the plan in draft form was shaping and directing policy, but nevertheless, I want to ask if I can. The plan original draft was 2018. There's quite a time lag there between then and now, and publication at the end of 2024, December 2024, is referenced here, so we're at least 6 years since first draft. What is the explanation for that?
It's safe to say there's probably a couple of two key issues: substantial responses, and therefore a lot of work to develop those. Sorry for the issues. A lot of work to develop those, policies in light of the respondents. Secondly, there was a political hiatus. The intent was to have this earlier, and thirdly, there has been a big change in the legislative landscape with the Climate Change Act, etc. So in a way that the last, during that hiatus, it's given time for a very small policy team to actually then review the whole document and make sure that the document that's in front of you now, that version, is actually up to date with all the intent for the policy and station environment.
Okay, look, I acknowledge there when asking the question that it was directed in policy. I accept that. I'm familiar with the fact that it's a relatively small policy team who have produced this, and I thank them for it. And it's reinforced again that breaks in government result in breaks in delivery, quite simply. Second question is, and I hope you'll forgive me any scepticism in this regard, but I'm reading from the Good Environmental Status section, which quotes that public authorities must, in exercising any functions so far as affecting the marine strategy area, have regard to the UK marine strategy. Now, I get the joined up approach of that. My difficulty is that this is in the context of water companies pumping raw sewage into rivers and therefore flowing into the sea in the UK more broadly, and even in Northern Ireland. Public authorities such as Northern Ireland Water have had at least a part of the Lough Neagh problem attributed to what they do. 24% of the issue there is attributed to wastewater treatment plants. So I suppose the summary is here, and bearing in mind the impacts last year and previously on the North Coast and the North Down Coast, the question has to be, how can this be enforced, and what penalties are there if these public authorities or others are not paying due regard to this strategy?
I'll start the answer and I'll ask Colin to finish that last bit. I think there's a recognition now, increasingly, I think Lough Neagh has probably brought that into focus, that we cannot look at any part of the environment in isolation. So it's really very much a source to sea issue now. We've had a lot of river basement management plans, legislation, etc. on the inland side. The marine plan, even in its draft form, has been a material consideration since 2014, so we haven't had an absence of that in the last 6 years. But I think now we're connecting and joining up these policies so that there'll be a more rigorous regime for public authorities when they're looking at decision making. On your specific question, I'll ask you for Colin on the enforcement or the following through.
So there's no penalty or enforcement in terms of any fine or anything through the marine plan, but what there is the duty that falls on all public authorities to take their decisions following the policies that are in that, and they can be held to account for that. And we know from the other marine plan authorities and other public authorities that they have been brought to judicial review and had decisions overturned, etc., for taking decisions that are not in accordance with their marine plans. So that would be the point of challenge if a public authority was found not to have gone through this decision-making process, not to have applied the mitigation hierarchy, and not to have done the tests that we have outlined within this plan. On your question, just to pick up on what Owen has already mentioned, in addition to the good environmental status and land and sea, also particularly your question is very closely linked to the water quality core policy, which sets duties around acting in accordance with the water framework regulations, bathing waters and shellfish waters. So it would be important to read that policy as well with that one in mind.
Okay, Alex, thank you for that.
All right, John. Okay, Declan.
Thank you, Chair. It's just on the transboundary issue, and you know very well that whilst we have two jurisdictions here, it's still one epidemiological island, and we see there how we're interconnected, like the way that the Blackwater flows from the south into Lough Neagh and then exits us up at Castle Rock, and in Fermanagh the River Erne comes from the north and exits into the ocean there between Rossnell and Bundoran. So how do you propose to try to harmonise those, because you don't want to have a situation where the environmental management plans in one jurisdiction is undermining your marine management in either jurisdiction, and also for the people who want to maximise the social, economic, environmental benefits of it, that they're not dealing with like different contradictory, perhaps, regulations. How will your plan deal with those transboundary issues?
I'll start off and then let Colin answer the specific again. I think the marine environment, and I'm relatively new, 3.5 years, what I've, noticed coming into this job is that in the marine environment there's been a lot of engagement across boundaries, be it with the other nations, the United Kingdom or of Ireland, because the marine environment was the one area that was shared by different jurisdictions, and also because of the commercial activity through fishing. So there's been, I would say, a sophistication in making sure that people understand what other people are doing and consultation. So I think there's been that culture for people to engage and be aware that the marine environment, if you do something on one end, it impacts the other end, and so that was a good basis. On the specifics of the plan, Colin, transboundary elements.
Yeah, so there is policies in the plan which set out transboundary duties, so duties for transboundary consultation and for decision makers to take into consideration the policies of the adjacent marine plan authorities. And I think as Owen has alluded to there, we are adjacent to I think it's 5 or 6 different marine plan areas. There's areas Scotland working around the coast, Isle of Man, and Irish waters as well. So in terms of then as we move into the very unique situation around our transboundary locks, Foyle and Carlingford, that's something which it very much, as the plan has been developed, it's been developed with that in recognition of the unique nature of those areas, and we have, as we developed the plan, we have developed synergies with the Irish marine plan as well. So that's all been taken into consideration, and the plan will hopefully guide decision makers through how they should be taking that into account.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, Declan. Michelle.
Okay, thank you, and thanks for your presentation. I welcome the inclusion of issues, particularly around coastal erosion in the plan. I suppose there have been challenges within government as to who takes the lead on this, and this has been an historic tension between various departments, which I'm more than aware of. There are obviously views as to how we deal with it, and there are, again, those tensions sort of are out with government as well as to whether or not we do include rock armour or sort of hard processes in order to basically protect what we have, be that in terms of property or road infrastructure. But there's also, I suppose, a view that basically we just let the sea do what it needs to do and basically let it go. I suppose what I'm trying to understand really from what's been included in the paper is what's the perspective of the department in this, and what advice then are you giving to public authorities with regards to coastal erosion and how they deal with proposals coming before them, because obviously there are those tensions and views.
I'll just take that. So very much recognises the challenge around coastal erosion, and this marine plan is not going to fix all of the policy and legislation issues that we have and the recognised gaps that there are around coastal erosion. What this plan does, and it's guided actually by the policy approach that's set out in the UK Marine Policy Statement for all marine plan authorities, which says that the marine plan authorities need to be working with the terrestrial planning system to develop these systems. And what you see in the policies around coastal processes, coastal change, is actually good synergy with the Department for Infrastructure's strategic planning policy statement. It sets out that decision makers need to be considering, when they're considering a proposal that comes forward, they need to be considering the impact that proposal itself may have on coastal processes and other adjacent areas. Will it result in increased erosion along the coast, for example? But also, decision makers must consider the lifetime of the proposal that they're putting forward, and we know the climate change projections are saying there will be sea level rise, there will be increasing storms, so that needs to be factored into the design of anything that is being built. and then the policy will guide people through that process. So very much it's really important that there's this interconnection between the land, the terrestrial planning system and the marine planning system, which is what the marine policy statement says we do and how that policy has been drafted. So there's very, very close read across between what's in this policy and the strategic planning policy statement.
It's really just about giving cognizance to those things.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it goes back to that best technical and scientific advice for those projects. And what we're trying to do is have this consistency overlay of policy, but we're also contributing to people who are making applications, etc., with the Marine Map Bureau and with the work we've done in conjunction with the Coastal Forum to actually map our coast so people have actually good, sound baseline information to make better decisions. And, it'll vary different parts of the coast. So it'll be up to the individual project, but it's making sure that those consultants or those applicants understand what's required in the policy, and actually they do have to bring forward that best technical and scientific evidence to justify why they're going to do something.
Of course, the challenge had been previously the fact that the lack of data and lack of information in order to make those decisions.
And I think this is part of, I would say part of the problem as well, being a terrestrial policy person for a long time. I think literally the marine area has been off the coast and out of sight for a large part of, for a lot of people. I think now the prominence of the marine area, this is very timely, having this sort of consistency. I mean, the stark facts, we're pressurised on land, and we have a third of our territorial area in the marine environment, which could offer those sort of enhanced economic opportunities. But we have to make sure we don't get it wrong for, socio-economic and communities and the environment. So I think this marine plan provides that consistent baseline of policy so that people can actually make informed decisions.
Thank you.
Right, Michelle. Nicola.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, folks, for your update here this morning. Could you maybe just outline what the major changes were from the original draft plan to the new modified one after the public consultation? I know obviously with the Climate Change Act and that there, all that, major ones had to be incorporated, but as more so about the actual responses from stakeholders maybe, and maybe if you could identify if there were any significant requests from the likes of the environmental sector or the fishing industry that couldn't be incorporated despite their request maybe with their consultation responses.
I'm going to hand over to Johnny as one of the drafters who will have that immediate sort of knowledge of the differences.
Yeah. The 2018 version, the consultation responses have all been analysed, and so the key areas that come through were good environmental status, the environmental perspective, transboundary, effective engagement. How are we going to actually talk about getting this done, and several other sort of key issues in terms of environmental work and coexistence, and how do we work together to get this done, as well as land and sea interaction, that join up between the sort of the dry bit and the wet bit as the responses were coming back. Those have all been analysed, and the draft that you would have seen in 2018, our version, we have gone through all those responses, and in some places gone over and above what the responses were sought. So you'll see that we now have a much more enhanced introductory section, which for those decision makers who may be new coming to marine matters, it now clarifies in a much clearer language and explains those sort of key definitions of what we are expecting decision makers to do. We have also elevated 3 strategic policies, which we didn't have before, and they really are the strategic policies really drive the vision and the objectives of the plan. So that's what we want to be front and centre in decision makers' minds. We've introduced a new policy. In fact, the Marine Plan for Northern Ireland will be pioneering a light pollution policy. We have split energy, which was sort of the message may have been slightly muddled, contained in one policy. That's now into 4, and the same, very importantly, with the natural heritage policy, where the message might have been slightly confused within one policy, has now been separated out into 4 policies, again for clarity. So those, and then how to operate, you'll see at the end of each of the policies, how to apply this policy section. That's really saying to the decision maker, many of which might not have had experience of marine matters, to say this is how we want you to apply this. So we set out now the policies. We've got 3 strategic policies. We have 17 core policies which the decision maker must consider when they're addressing all their policies. So you've got the science section within that, the first 10, then you've got the cultural, and then the how do we do it, so the coexistence, the engagement, the land and sea interaction towards the end of the policy, plus the sectoral ones. So they've been significantly enhanced. We feel that we've addressed all the issues. In terms of responses from key players, we note that when we didn't have, for example, a direct response back from the senior or the major fishing organisations, we have engaged with them throughout the process to ensure that their concerns have been addressed in this, and the whole sort of collaborative approach of people talking together, taking the policies into accordance to produce the best decisions for all aspects of the various marine sectors. So that's really, it's an enhanced document than the 2018 one, 100-page thicker, but we feel it's better for that extra bit.
Would you be content or confident that the likes of the fishing industry would be content with what they see with this updated plan?
Well, it's
because of the engagement you've had with them, I mean.
Yes, yeah, I think the policies are there for them to use effectively to address any of the concerns that they have. So we'll be ongoing engagement and with them and the rest of the stakeholders. But yeah.
That's helpful. Thank you.
I think it's up to us now, as we go through the adoption process and hopefully be adopted, for us to communicate with all stakeholders, and actually, I think that's where, and we've identified this now, that we need to. It's okay, consultant, do the plan, dealing with the respondents' issues, but now we need to actually make sure people are educated and understand it. So I think that'll be the next phase as we go through the adoption phase and get it adopted. So, and I think we've got, we've changed our mindset in the marine environment with a lot more focus on co-design. So the Blue Carbon Action Plan, the review of marine protected areas, the ongoing development of fisheries management plans, we've moved to a very much co-design approach because we've realised we have to do, this is going to be a very squeezed space, and we need to actually get stakeholders in. They might not get what they want maybe all the time, but to understand what the issues are. So I think that's our next stage.
Just one final question, Chair. With everything that we're talking about at the minute, obviously budgets and squeezed budgets is a massive issue. Is there anything within this plan that you think that should be prioritised when it comes to finances if there's going to be financial difficulties in implementing the entire plan?
Well, I think this plan is setting a framework for public authorities to make decisions. So inherently, it's, other public authorities will have priorities, and they use this to see how their priorities play out. So I wouldn't say we're neutral in this plan about what is a priority as such. It's about actually making sure you understand what you need to consider when you're looking at your priorities or you're making your decisions or you're doing your own plans. So in that sense, it's sort of agnostic and neutral.
Thank you for that. Thanks, Chair.
Just to make a couple of queries, will the plan require any legislation flowing from it?
In itself, no. But obviously, public authorities may look at it and say that something might be needed in their areas. But the plan itself, no. It's about informing decision making.
In your briefing papers, it asks about the independent investigation. Marine Act and Marine Coastal Act require that the department considers appointing an independent person to investigate the proposals. Outline that to me if that were decided upon, or that's not like a PAC, Planning Appeals Commission investigation as we would know it. Is it something similar to that, or can you explain more about that?
If it was considered that there were unresolved matters that needed to be dealt with in an independent investigation, it would be a similar style of an examination, as has been seen with the local council LDPs, who would take it. Perhaps the Water Appeals Commission, I don't know, but it'd be a similar style of inquiry with consultations, responses in, and then some form of decision on those unresolved matters.
There hasn't been any adverse comments in that respect that would require that type of investigation, has there?
No, we feel content that we have addressed, the vast majority of the issues that have been raised, and in many cases have gone over and above to ensure that they have been addressed in the plan.
Is there any particular areas that haven't been addressed that you need to bring to our attention?
There's none that I can think of.
Right.
And I think, Chair, recent engagement with key stakeholders, I think they'd be looking for this to be adopted sooner rather than later. Because all the policies are covered. There's a currency to it because we've taken on board the recent legislation and stuff that's happening in the policy and legislation framework. And also, we're actually looking at some of these new policies like light pollution, etc. So it's quite a current plan. Maybe that's an advantage of having a bit of a delay, that we've managed to actually incorporate stuff recently.
Okay. No further questions? No. Okay, well look, thank you all very much, Owen, Colin and Johnny. Much appreciated, and for taking the questions so distinctly.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay, members, it does ask that the Department will welcome the Committee's views on the plan and aspects of it. Has anybody any further comment that we need to make or response to the Department? In fairness, we haven't got any lobbying from any of the organisations that would be involved in this. Happy enough that we progress?
Happy to progress, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Next item is the briefing from the Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs on the proposed Small Business Research Initiative Phase 2, the Sustainable Use of Livestock Slurry Project. I refer you to your packet pages 281 to 285 for the briefing paper from the Department dated the 17th of May. I would remind members that the content of the briefing is largely in the public domain. However, elements are regarded as commercially sensitive as the project involves intellectual property IP of private organisations who participated in the scheme Phase 1. So when you get settled, I'll pass over to the officials. Claire is it, and Claire and Jonathan. You're very welcome. So over to you to make a presentation up to 10 minutes, and hopefully you'll take some questions then.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you for the opportunity to provide a briefing to the committee on our proposed sustainable utilisation of livestock slurry project. So I'm Claire Cockrell, Director of Green Growth and Climate Action Delivery Division in DERA, and I'm joined this morning by Jonathan McFerrin, who's the Deputy Director of Green Growth, and unfortunately Judith Wilson isn't able to be here, sends her apologies. So by way of background, the project considers how to process livestock slurry in a sustainable way, making use of outputs, and in that way creating a circular bioeconomy approach to address the problem of excess nutrients from agriculture. The project is of significant strategic importance to the Department, to the wider NICS and agriculture and environment in a number of ways. Firstly, nutrient management. So Northern Ireland has an annual surplus of approximately 6,000 tonnes of phosphorus from livestock manure. Excess phosphorus pollutes our waterways and contributes to biodiversity loss. And we've seen this recently with the effects in Loch Ness with proliferation of blue-green toxic algae caused in part by excess nutrients from agriculture. And you'll be aware that the Northern Ireland Assembly passed a motion in May declaring an ecological and biodiversity crisis with specific reference to Lough Neagh. To date, there's been no satisfactory means of dealing with the surplus phosphorus, and so this proposed project would seek to address that and is expected to form part of DAERA's Lough Neagh action plan. Secondly, in terms of decarbonisation, anaerobic digestion of organic material to produce biomethane as a renewable natural gas is identified by the Climate Change Committee as a key action to support Northern Ireland's pathway to net zero. Through using AD, this project can contribute to the decarbonisation of hard to decarbonise sectors such as energy, heavy transport and agriculture. Converting biogas to biomethane provides further opportunities by way of carbon capture, and this aspect is of particular relevance as we seek to plan and deliver against targets to reduce carbon emissions required under the Climate Change Act. Thirdly, in terms of a circular bioeconomy through the efficient recycling of our organic nutrients, the process of extracting nutrients from slurry to produce firstly a solid fraction that can be used as feedstock for AD to produce biomethane and renewable electricity, and then to further extract phosphorus from the remaining digestate to produce outputs such as fertiliser, which can act as a replacement for artificial fertiliser for use in Northern Ireland or export, biogenic carbon dioxide and low carbon cement, and these can be valorised to increase the economic sustainability. So the approach exemplifies green growth through its combination of promoting a cleaner environment, climate action and a green economy, and it feeds into a number of cross-executive strategies and initiatives. The Minister is very supportive of the project, and it contributes to key priority areas within DAERA: climate change, environmental protection and sustainable agri-food sector, as well as investing in science, innovation and knowledge transfer. The project is also complementary to work that DFE is taking forward, their recent launch of the DFE biomethane call for evidence. So the project will help to inform policy decisions and demonstrate the economic viability of processing slurry. So it builds on a very successful initial phase of a small business research initiative where DAERA awarded $600,000 in funding to 6 companies in 2023 to develop proof of concept stage solutions to address the problem of excess phosphorus from livestock slurry, and that project completed in August of last year. Excuse me. In their final reports, the successful companies outlined proposals to develop concepts into practical delivery models at scale, and all of the proposals centred around the use of separated livestock slurry solids as a feedstock for AD to produce biomethane. So phase 2 of the project would explore how these knowledge and research outputs might be scaled up into an industrial practice by providing funding for the development of flagship testing and large-scale demonstration facilities. So subject to approval, the project is proposing to provide in excess of 10 million capital funding for 3 or 4 of those phase 1 companies. The capital will be used to support the funding of mobile separation equipment for initial separation of slurry on farms, and then also for equipment to separate post-AD digestate. So a key target is to make a significant reduction in the current levels of excess phosphorus by reducing the amount applied to the Northern Ireland land base by at least 1,000 tonnes by the end of the third year, year 3 of the project. So we'll be working closely with the Strategic Investment Board colleagues who administer the Northern Ireland SBRI programme on behalf of DFE. And SIB brings a level of commercial experience, skills and access to specialist advice from Innovate UK as and when that's required. And we would also be supported by a wider team within DAERA, DFE, SIB and AFBI, providing technical experience in addition to the project board in line with standard project management procedures. So we'd like to take this opportunity to highlight that DAERA works closely with DFE and other next departments and arm's length bodies on sustainable biomethane production and nutrient management, both on a regular informal basis and also through a DAERA-chaired interdepartmental biomethane group. And that's comprised of representatives from DAERA, DFE, DFI, AFBI, NI Water, Invest NI and SIB. The proposal provides an opportunity to turn a decades-long problem into a solution that will continue to provide green growth, sustainability and a just transition for a range of NI sectors for many decades into the future. So thank you for your attention, and we'd be very happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for that. Sounds a pretty exciting project, to be fair, and something that we've talked about in this committee for a wee while now, about taking P out of the system to respread on land. So it does sound extremely positive, and I know that you've actually said here that the issue is not about the renewable aspect of it so much as about taking the P out of the system, the phosphate. But has there been a business case carried out around the return on renewable energy and how that might benefit? My second question then is around the issue of the on-farm, because I notice you did say that this is, if I can just find it here, yes, the focus will be on funding mobile separation equipment that will go around farms, which again sounds very positive, and I'm just wondering how that works practically. Does that put energy back into the system there and then, or is that stored? And the issue around what happens to the material then that's left on farm, can that be spread on the land at that stage? So just around the practicalities, I'm a wee bit unsure.
Yeah, so maybe if I deal with the second one first, Chair. In terms of the practicalities of that, yes, it's very much about separation of slurry on farm, and that can be done by mobile separation, and that's one of the ways we would see that happening. It can be done by static separation in larger farms. Sometimes that'll be done. But in terms of the project, we have a number who have been doing that practically. So it would almost be like a milk run, you know, where somebody will go around, separate the slurry, take away the solids, which is the high in phosphorus fraction. Mm-hmm. That goes into AD then as a feedstock. And then what remains is a more liquid, it'll have more of the nitrogen, but it'll have a lot of the phosphorus taken out. So that'll go back into the tanks on the farm. But what we're finding, and even from working with farmers, is that leaves you with a more liquid fraction that is easier to spread, whether that's using less equipment, and you're left with more space in your tanks as well because you're taking away the solids. So it's something that we've seen so far that farmers are quite keen on the idea. So it's easier spread. It's leaving the nutrients that grass farmers will need. So you're taking away the phosphorus, or a lot of the phosphorus, but leaving the nitrogen.
So really, Johnny, what's happening is they're actually separating it on farm, but they're not utilising, they're not putting in the that high phosphorus material into the AD. They're taking it away.
So that's taken away. So you could, and the way it would work, generally speaking, the way we would see it, there'd be a number of AD plant owners. Okay. So then that would be going to provide the feedstock for the AD, and so a number of farmers would provide one AD, but then you're still left with the digestate, and we'll maybe come on to that later on in terms of the digestate. In terms of the second or the first question, in terms of the business case in terms of the renewable energy, that will be more our colleagues in DFE who are dealing with that in terms of biomethane, and as Claire mentioned, there's a call for evidence out there at the minute. That has been launched there a few weeks ago, looking at just the viability of this, looking at the viability of feedstocks in Northern Ireland as well. So they're looking at that, but that will be more DFE rather than ourselves.
Okay. I notice here you have said Denmark seem to be well ahead of the game, but also it says here that the sector, Denmark has seen more growth in overall energy terms in this sector than any European country except the UK. So is the UK pretty much ahead of the game too?
Well, I'm not just completely sure, but in terms of it, Denmark would be one of the leaders. Germany and France are, and some of the good work in the Netherlands as well. But even in terms of targets, Denmark tend to be by 2030 will be 100% of their gas will be coming from renewable sources. That's their aim to do that. So some of the technology would be similar to what we would be talking about here, using a range of feedstocks. Mm-hmm. But no, the UK, there's a number of good examples within the UK. I didn't think they were as far on as Denmark or some of the other European nations.
Okay, interesting. Michelle.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for your presentation. And Thomas touched on some of the things I was going to ask, just in relation to maybe what the pilots deliver for the farmer and what the benefits are for the farm.
Yeah. So I suppose from the farmer's point of view, it does give, as I mentioned there, the space in the tanks. So it when farmers are under pressure, this is a good thing to be able to take away the solids that aren't needed, but leave what is needed. You know, some people will talk about waste. It's not a waste when it's nutrients that are needed. So that will be one of the things. From a timeliness point of view, then it allows a farmer to spread when they should be spreading, as opposed to spreading when they have to. So they can choose then when to do that, even for the best uptake of the nutrients. And I suppose the third thing, it is that nutrient balance. You know, so rather than just spreading because you have it, you're spreading because you need to. And I suppose it ties into the soil nutrient health scheme as well, to be able to match up what you're doing, and you're getting rid of what you don't need that's being used elsewhere. So it's a positive. And then, sorry, the final point, Michelle, was about the easier spread. You know, so that liquid fraction that's left is easier to spread using less equipment.
Okay, and the financials around this, is there a cost to the farmer? Or will there be a cost benefit to him, in so much as obviously he's providing what is a very sort of high value product, and will he get something in return?
Yeah, I suppose in the phase one, this was very much a pilot, a proof of concept. So that was looking at, can this work? And so we proved that it could work. Going forward, then that'll have to be decided in terms of what the model would be. You know, whether there will be a cost to take that away, or a payment. And it depends. When you look at the Netherlands, in the Netherlands, farmers pay to get some of that taken away. It could be cost neutral, but I think it'll depend just how this shapes up as it goes forward. You would imagine a number of farmers will be providing silage to AD plant owners, and are obviously paid for that. Separated slurry is a different product, or raw slurry is a different product. It wouldn't just have the same biomethane potential. But you would imagine that there will be some kind of cost model, but that needs to be worked out.
Okay, and you kind of referred to this as a bit like a milk run, and obviously there's the mobile aspect to it. Yeah. Are there any concerns in relation to disease transmission between farms? And obviously very conscious of the whole issue around TB.
Yeah. No, well, that's something that we did look at in phase one, and so our veterinary colleagues were involved in that. And it's the same if you, even with stream bioenergy as a good example of where poultry litter will go up to the plant at Tully, and so there's disinfecting of lorries when they come in. It would be the same that you'd be doing that with somebody coming in to separate the slurry. You'd be disinfecting and you'd be managing that process. So our veterinary colleagues are content with it as long as it's managed well. But you know, you're right to raise the question. It does need to be looked at. Okay,
and just finally, obviously these are large scale projects, and I suppose it's about looking maybe at on-farm solutions. But there's quite a substantial government intervention in this project. Curious to know whether the Department of Economy is involved, but also sort of the sustainability of these plants, and whether or not they will be sustainable post the intervention from government.
Yeah, and I suppose what we're thinking here for this phase two is very much setting up a demonstration, and that's why we do think that government intervention is needed to set up this at-scale demonstration site so people can see what is possible. Going forward, many other jurisdictions, many other European countries do have subsidy schemes and provide support in different ways. At the minute, there's not that in Northern Ireland. But I suppose we're looking at this from a demonstration point of view, so that's where the intervention is. Going forward, we'll have to see. There is, we do have a number, as you know, around 80 AD plants here, and they've been set up on the basis of rocks, a lot of them, and providing electricity. So to move then to biomethane is going to be a different model. So there's still work to be done on that in terms of viability. I suppose just one final point would be, we want to look at this from a DERA perspective. We're thinking about nutrient management, we're thinking about water quality, but then you have these other opportunities for production of biofertiliser. You've got the biomethane, you've got potentially a biochar, you've got CO2 capture, so there's a number of other aspects where there's value in it, rather than just thinking of the biomethane on its own. So it's important that you look across the board in this one.
Yeah, and we do have close working with arrangements with Department for the Economy. So I mentioned the interdepartmental biomethane group, so they sit on that. So and then obviously we would have engagement as part of the climate action plan procedures. So DFE leading on energy. So and we would have just very close working relationships with them, have fed into the development of the biomethane call for evidence as well. So good engagement, and they're looking very keenly as this work develops, so that that can inform their policy going forward as well.
Thank you.
Hey, Declan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the presentation. I suppose. One of the things I note that in your phase 2 proposal, it's to assist 3 to 4 suppliers to develop demonstration plants, and the challenge will be open to successful phase 1 lead suppliers listed below, and obviously I'm not going to list them, but apart from there's one of them at Ulster, but they all seem to be in the east of the ban, whereas the majority of the slurry will be produced in the west, where most of the farms are. Will that have any negative impact for farmers getting access to this equipment or availing of the opportunities?
I suppose yes would be the answer, Declan, with this one, in that we're tied to it just with the nature of the project. As you'll be aware, from the 16 people who applied, or 16 organisations applied, 6 were appointed, and just geographically that's where they tend to be. And so you'll be working in that geographic area, generally speaking. But this is for demonstration. We don't see this as being solving the problem for Northern Ireland. So there will need to be more, and there does need to be more happening then in the West, especially. And there's opportunities, whether it's Fermanagh or which is one where there's a specific need, and even a specific need for biomethane, and then a specific need for dealing with waste. But this project will be very much dealing with what we have in front of us, but it'll show what can be done. But there's opportunities, absolutely, where this should be happening.
And Chair, just a small follow-up. You mentioned, I'll sort of roll 2 into 1, just from my own information, so you're removing the excess P that will be in the solids. See what's left behind, what nutrients are specifically left behind, and just as well, you mentioned, Jonathan, in your presentation about a number of farmers having access to an AD plant, but would that be like a consortium of farmers who have access to an AD? Because I'm very conscious that there's, certainly in the West, there's a lot of very small farmers, and you'd want a situation where small farmers would have equal access to the opportunities as well.
Absolutely, and that's very important. I suppose that first question, in terms of the digestate, yes, you take that solid fraction, it goes into the AD plant, and then you're left with the digestate out of the back of the AD plant, and that does need to be dealt with as well, because if you're just land spreading the digestate, you have the same problem. The phosphorus is going back out onto land. Yeah. So our project is, yes, it's looking at separating the slurry, but it's also looking at what do you do with the digestate. So whether that's turning that into a biofertiliser, or whether it's turning into a biochar or a peat type product that can be exported or used where it's needed. So that's a really important aspect of this, because if we only do the first bit, you're helping the farmer in terms of the slurry separation, but you're not really helping water quality. So you need to remove phosphorus from the digestate. And I've just forgotten the second question.
Well, the first one, what's left in the tank? What nutrients are left in the tank?
Yeah.
In the farm?
Yeah, so what you're left, it's just like a more liquid type of slurry, and quite often from our own experience from the project, that can go back into the same tank. And that's okay. People have used that. If you had a separate tank, that would be possibly even better, but you don't need to have that. But it's just a more liquid form of slurry, but without the phosphorus and without some of the solids, because you've taken that away, so it's easier to spread.
And sorry, the other thing was about the so how might the
smaller
farmers have an access? How might you visualise that working?
Yeah. No, that's the way we would have used that in the pilot, where you would have a number of farmers. So the project, the person who's running the supplier who's running the project will have, say, a mobile separator, and it'll go around farms of whatever size. Just go onto the farm, spend 2 hours separating the slurry, take away the solids. So it very much involves the individual farmer, whatever the size. But it then does escalate up, I suppose, is where you would have this with a number of AD plants then providing their digestate into a centralised plant. So you'd almost have a cascading effect where you would have, so you have 200 farmers, and these figures aren't correct, but you have 200 farmers, you have 5 AD plants, and you have 1 central processing plant for the digestate. So it's thinking of that model. So everybody can be involved.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Just a quick query around the separation. Obviously, is there a different process for the likes of hen manure than there is for cattle slurry? Because the amount of solids in each is quite different.
Yeah, there is. And I suppose there's difference in terms of phosphorus content within that. So it is different. And even when you're thinking of whether it's layer manure or broiler manure, is going to be different as well. So I mentioned stream deals with the poultry, deals with the broiler sector. There's no real solution at the minute for the layer sector, so that does need to be looked at. But it is very different. It can be mixed, in terms of going into an AD. You can use different feedstocks.
So is this project focused on cattle slurry only?
Cattle and pigs mainly, right. But yeah, mainly cattle and pigs.
All right, Patsy.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thank you both for coming to brief us on this. We all know that the figures are showing us the water quality in the rivers is pretty bad. The phosphate levels in Lough Neagh is annually increasing. So from an environmental point of view and from water consumption point of view, because 46% of our water supply comes from Lough Neagh, something radically needs to be done. However, could I maybe just ask one wee question, and this is just more attack. At paragraph 4 there, you make mention that Northern Ireland has an annual surplus of 6,000 tonnes of phosphates from livestock. What do you mean by a surplus? A surplus over what? In other words, is there a norm, an acceptable norm of production? Where does that? It's a calculation thing. I'm just sort of it puzzled me about that.
Yeah, I suppose it's nutrient requirement. What's needed. So that's excess phosphate of what is needed for crop requirement in Northern Ireland. So every year you have this excess, and so if it's not being taken up by the plants, it's not being taken up by the crops.
So it's a scientific model that.
Well, it's
scientific
projection. It's calculated, yeah.
Right. Okay. Now, could I maybe just come on a wee bit? Like, none of what you're saying is new. That's in practice in other parts of other parts of the world, in fact. And I think maybe yesterday the Irish government announced that they were funding 200 AD plants. So could I maybe just ask you, the consultation period itself, is that consultation period, is that going to hear just how it's being done elsewhere? Because from what I'm hearing is the solutions, whether they're for an urban situation or whether they're for, i.e. district heating and the likes of that, or whether they're for maybe located in more rural areas where you have location with the AD plant and whatever you use with the gas and take it off from there. But none of this is new. So therefore the solutions are already there, and the consultation period, I presume, will be about hearing about what the solutions are and how they're working elsewhere. Because from what I've read is in Denmark, some of the district heating solutions have halved the cost of heating. So there's multiple advantages to that. So I'm just wondering, you don't want to be reinventing the wheel whenever the wheel's perfectly well inflated and going around. So what sort of information, experience have you drawn from whether it's the likes of Denmark, France, Spain, wherever, where this is an operation and seems to be working perfectly well, or what are the disadvantages that have been established already? Just, and I presume somebody from the department has gone and visited these plants or taken advice from people who have visited them or operated them or established them.
Yeah, well, I suppose you're right. There's nothing new under the sun, you know. So these are tried and tested technologies in some ways. I suppose there is a wee bit of you do shape it to the context of where you are. And for us, I think that for DFE and their call for evidence, they're looking for a number of things. Part of that we'll see about the viability of feedstock and availability of feedstock. That'll be one aspect. I don't think it'll be coming up with different technologies or something new. So in some ways we do have a, but it'll be helpful. It'll be very helpful to get the feedback from that call for evidence. But we do have the solutions for some of these, but it's a matter of bringing that together, private sector, public sector, working together to provide those solutions, and finance is part of that. You know, these are, to develop these big plants, you know, it could be 10, 20, 30 million for some of these large plants. So there's a lot of money involved.
And it will take at least government support to some extent to help maybe realise the private sector investment in that, because somebody somewhere, some accountant somewhere, the bean counters will already have done this in other countries, and they know what's required to make it work.
Yeah, absolutely, and there is. We hear sometimes that there's green finance out there, but financiers are only going to put money into something that's going to be viable. But we need to tie that in then with our needs from an environmental point of view for reducing emissions, for water quality.
How long is it likely to take from this, the consultation exercise, to seeing, with a good wind, to seeing the project's been rolled out?
Well, I suppose we're not tied in with the consultation. So with us, with our project, we're going through a process at the minute, just with the business case. So it's been improved internally. It's currently sitting with the Department of Finance. So it's the final part of the chain. We would hope to be launching in at the start of the summer.
Specifically,
for our
Jonathan, sorry for interrupting you.
Okay.
Specifically, a business case for what?
For our project, for this project that Claire outlined, the sustainable utilisation of livestock slurry. So this north of £10 million investment into 3 or 4 different different models.
So this is a pilot project essentially.
It's an at scale. It's demonstration plants. So this will be at scale. So this will be. It's not just proof of concept. We've gone through that.
Well, sorry for labouring it, but
you're okay.
3. Whenever Queen's University says that probably to facilitate and maybe utilise fully the gas network, you need about 150. How long is that going to be before you even come to the half? Obviously, the government, the department has done the projections and looked at this is what we need to be rolling out. This is how long we need to take. This is how we need to make our climate change targets and all that type of stuff. So, what is the government plan?
Well, I suppose for us, and just even to set the context of that as well, these 3 projects, or 3 or 4, will be removing 1,000 tonnes of phosphorus per year. Right. So if you think of that excess 6,000 tonnes, this would 3 plants will be able to remove 1,000 tonnes. So it's significant. Yeah. There's still a lot more to go, but so it's a significant intervention, you know, to be able to do this. But it will be much bigger. This is just us looking at a demonstration plants to show the concept, and I suppose what the difference is. We haven't done this before in Northern Ireland about separating slurry in this way, using that as a feedstock. It's been more silage-based food waste. Some slurry's been going in there, but this is a different way of doing it that is going to deal with the problems that we have within Delran, as well as producing biomethane.
I suppose it's trying to stimulate that uptake and de-risk and pump prime so that it does provide a catalyst to grow the industry.
And my other point was, well, obviously you don't want to be reinventing the wheel and all this and coming out and saying we need a pilot project, see how this works, whenever facts and figures from other countries and people with expertise in other countries already know how it works. Yeah. So what liaison has been done with other countries or with firms that have worked in other countries that are giving you the stats and figures saying, look, this is how it works. Here's a model that might work for you here. We have something over in Spain or Denmark, wherever it is, that's very, very, very close to what you need in the north here. Here, this is what you need to roll with.
Yeah, I suppose there's two answers to that, Patsy, in that some staff did go across and were to look at some of these technologies and some of this working in practice. As well as that, the suppliers, those 6 suppliers that you have on your sheet there, they're all dealing with European providers using technology from different countries as well. So, no, this is using sort of state-of-the-art technology, but and it does move on, and you do learn when you see what's been done by people who get ahead, who have done this before us. So, I suppose there's still learning to do, but that's what that's why we like this model of private sector, the SBRI model, because it does allow people to use that latest technology and demonstrate different technologies. So the 3 demonstration sites will be doing slightly different things, and then you can see, well, how do we roll that out to commercialisation beyond that?
Okay, Graham, thanks very much. Okay, thanks, Chair.
John Blair.
Thanks, Chair. Claire, Jonathan, thank you both for your presentation and your answers so far, which have covered some of the questions that I was going to ask. But I want to, if I can, concentrate on a couple of areas. Before I do so, I have to say, though, that there's a degree of reality check required around, it's been mentioned here a number of times today, pollution. The problem of phosphorus from land to water has been brutally displayed by what we've seen in terms of river pollution, and those problems will need legal enforcement measures to solve them, as well as the programmes and policies such as that before us today, as good as it is as a trial. And in relation to the trial, I think it was you, Claire, who mentioned the delivery of a model of scale in relation to this, and I'm not sure I'm getting your exact terminology right. Do we have any idea what the scale of interest would be in Northern Ireland? Has that been scoped at this stage? Albeit we're in the business of a trial here, but do we know beyond that trial what the level of uptake and provision therefore might be?
And interest from people, from farmers or from...
farmers, yeah.
Yeah, well, I suppose a bit of a practical answer to that. We would have been involved in the when CAFRI were doing their Slurry Open Days back in January, and so we would have been dealing with, I think there were 400 farmers came through those sessions, and we were presenting some of this work, talking about the opportunities, and we did get a very favourable response, just because of some of those points that I mentioned earlier about getting some of that slurry that isn't needed, taking it off the farm, space in tanks, easier to spread, and so on. So generally speaking, through farmers, through speaking to the Ulster Farmers Union as well about the concepts, it's been generally favourable. I suppose what we would like to see is this working in practice, and then to be able to see it so that you can see a demonstration site and then and see how it actually works, rather than just more the sort of conceptual idea.
Okay. And then my second question, and I don't think this has been covered specifically, and some of this will sit with DE, and I appreciate that, and I'm asking, will you be working with DE, for example, on ensuring that any circular economy benefit to this will meet the Rural Needs and Rural Needs Act, for that matter, in terms of providing jobs and economic input to our rural area, as well as from companies that may well be based in larger urban areas in the provision of this? Can that be checked, or is that a next stage analysis that needs to be done?
Yeah, I suppose we are working with DFE in relation to that and feeding into that circular bioeconomy approach. In terms of the SBRI, this is sort of a research phase, and so the likes of rural needs impact assessment wouldn't have been conducted to date. That would, as you say, be a next stage. So when we get to rolling that out, yes, that would be
likely to be considered immediately, because it's crucial that towns and villages across the area have opportunities from this if they're there and they're not focused in are already well provided for urban district.
Yeah, and I suppose one of the things as well, and just from only glanced through the biomethane strategy that came out there just earlier on this week from the Irish National Biomethane Strategy, and one of the things it was concentrating on was exactly that, about thinking about the opportunities for jobs. Whether that's the setting up of AD plants and the associated running that people needed to run that. So there's real opportunities, and I think it ties in very well when we think of our relationship with DFE and working closely, and thinking of Minister Murphy's vision, in terms of regional balance and productivity and emissions reductions. This fits in perfectly. And as well, Claire mentioned about the green growth strategy. This is ideal for green growth, in terms of environmental improvements, reducing emissions and green jobs. So it ticks an awful lot of boxes.
Okay, look, thank you both.
Okay, John. William Irwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I welcome your presentation. I think it's encouraging, at least, that we're looking at solutions, because the solutions has to be found. So it's very important. You do say that 3 plants could deal with 1,000 tonnes, so that would look to me like it's going to take probably 18 plants in Northern Ireland to deal with over 6,000 tonnes. It's going to be a large investment. I've just worked out what investment that will be, what investments needed for that, and what government. There certainly will have to be some level of support from government to encourage that. The other issue probably for me is farmers are going to be dependent probably on this. Those that have the plants will want to make a profit. Will they could overcharge the farmer? Who's going to be in control of that? It'll be a business proposition.
I suppose the first one would be in terms of that investment. This is looking at just three different demonstration sites, and we have this target of 1,000 tonnes. It could be more than that, and as this develops, we'll have to see. So we haven't done the maths in terms of how many plants, and even looking at the Irish National Biomethane Strategy, it's thinking about a number of these. It'll be a mixture, but you need a number of large plants. As you see, and I've mentioned Stream a couple of times, they're doing a significant expansion that will deal with all broiler litter in Northern Ireland. So that'll be one plant dealing with that. So it's hard to know exactly how much will be needed, but it's important, and it ties in with Declan's point earlier on about having that geographical spread as well. That's important, about how you do that, because you don't want, ideally you want, and especially for livestock slurry, you don't want to be transporting raw slurry about. You're transporting liquid about, which isn't, or water about essentially. So you want to be able to have a model where you're not travelling too far. And the second question was, it's very much, it needs to be a model that has farmers at the centre of it. Farmers are part of the solution, and have to be part of the solution. So I think it'll maybe be processor driven to a certain extent, with some of our processors being involved in here. But farmers need to be involved and need to be rewarded, whatever that way it is. But as we said earlier, we don't have the model yet in terms of payment or gate fees in terms of livestock slurry.
We all know ammonia levels are an issue. This will not impact on ammonia levels, no?
It could. It'll impact. We would like to think that this is going to be of benefit in terms of the way that this is going to be, the way this is going to be handled, in terms of getting slurry off the farm dealt with and processed early on, and then the different organisations, the suppliers who will be running these plants, they'll be very conscious of that, about how they capture that ammonia, whether they use technology of ammonia strippers, different ways of doing that. But no, it's an essential part, and we have that built into our project, both at phase 1 and at phase 2, in dealing with ammonia.
It'd be great if it would deal with both issues, or help deal with both issues.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Right, William. Nicola.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Alison, for your information here this morning. Just following on from both Declan and Patsy's questions. So, phase 2 will now hopefully be rolled out soon, and you're drafting a business case for the Department of Finance to get the funded places there, and I think there's 3 to 4 suppliers that were already taking part in phase 1 that'll be able to take part in this. So from that there, what criteria do they need to meet, or what's the selection process there for those 3 to 4 suppliers to actually be brought onto this project? And how long do you think that phase 2 will last, and what's your vision moving on from that there? And that kind of brings back Declan's point about the West not having been represented in this case, and small farmers in that case as well. So, like, how long do you think it'll last, and what's your vision then moving forward, and how you're going to actually incorporate the West of the Ban and small farmers?
With the selection criteria and the way that worked, it was an open competition for phase 1. But the way that SBRI, the Small Business Research Initiative, works is that when you move through the phases, you're not introducing new companies at that stage. So it's in that subset of the 16. So that's where we're down to 6. So it'll only be those 6 who'll apply then. So the business case we have and the scope we have for that now, they will apply for that probably at the start of the summer. And we have criteria then set for that we'll be releasing to the suppliers at that stage. One of the key things, Nicola, will be that ability to remove a significant amount of phosphorus. That's I suppose the key driver for us in this one. So it's 1,000 tonnes is our target that we have for the total. But we want to see that organisations will be able to deal with that, a significant amount of that. So we've been meeting with those 6 suppliers, and as we've sort of gone through this journey of the business case, keeping them informed of what's happening. So that's the first thing. That's the way, and so we'll be releasing that criteria to them at the start of the competition. In terms of the timing, it's a 3-year project that'll start probably September time, we're hoping, or certainly the autumn, and then that'll run for 3 years. With the potential of 1 additional year, but we're hoping that it'll be just the 3. There'll be no additional money from that 4th year, but just in case organisations are slower at getting to those targets. I suppose we'll be getting some information back and data that we're going to be capturing and monitoring all the way through. So we don't have to wait until the end of 3 years before something else happens.
Yes.
And this is just one particular competition. This is one particular project. I would like to think that there'll be others that will be doing things like the shared island bioeconomy. That's something else that's running in parallel with this. There'll be other private investors who will be wanting to do this, will be wanting to expand in other areas. So we hope that we'll be taking the learnings from this project and they'll be shared with others. So it's not a matter of waiting till the end and then we decide what to do next. Hopefully they'll run in parallel.
I think there is real benefit though of building on the success of the phase 1 and taking forward 3 or 4 companies and that first phase has been very successful in showing real potential and taking forward working with those companies. We've built up very good relationships and it allows us to build on the momentum, so it allows that to happen really quite quickly. So there are advantages with the SBRI and also the support around the SBRI scheme is very beneficial to us also, but as Jonathan said, it doesn't preclude other things happening in parallel.
That's fair. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Declan, you want in quickly?
Thanks, Chair, for that. And again, I'll just ask one middle length of question. Is this, first of all, is this optional, and or does it, or will it be connected into the Nutrient Action Plan, the Soil Health Scheme, and ultimately the Farm Sustainability Payment? Right? And also, does this have implications for farmers, the existing equipment that they have? Because you're dealing with a more liquid substance now, so does that have implications for their existing spreading equipment and their existing storage? Because you're not going to be storing a solid material, you're going to be storing a more liquid material that may be more of a likelihood of a breach, for example. So have those issues been factored in?
Well, I think that's that first point about tying in with the NAP, tying in with Soil Nutrient Health Scheme, absolutely right, and they will do. There's not an obligation for people to be involved at this stage. But we will be looking at that. There's a group being set up within DERA to look at thinking about a regulatory framework going forward. How's this going to work? Because it's not sustainable what we're doing at the minute. So thinking about how we do it. So it ties in with practical projects like this, but it does need to tie in then with the new NAP that is being looked at. Then there's a lot of training with soil nutrient health scheme. So farmers, you would like to think, are going to be thinking, well, look, we know what we need now from the soil nutrient health scheme, so we don't need to be putting on maybe as much. And it ties in then with chemical fertiliser as well, you know, and when we think about a biofertiliser potentially being available within Northern Ireland, that's going to potentially change things as well. In terms of the sustainability payment, it's not tied in with that at this stage. But our other policy, ag policy colleagues would be maybe dealing with that in the future. In terms of the equipment, no, it shouldn't change things. You know, it's not a drastic change. So in terms of storage or spreading equipment, it shouldn't require a change. In fact, it'll just make it a bit easier. You know, for that to be spread. And as I mentioned earlier, you're thinking about that liquid fraction going back into the same tank with a lot of people. So it's mixing that up with the original slurry. So it's just making it slightly easier to spread. So no, there shouldn't be.
Tom wanted in briefly.
Thank you, Chair. Very interesting project. What role do you see the Department of the Economy will have in this now and going forward in the future?
Yeah, well, I suppose they'll be taking the findings from this call for evidence, and then that's on a pathway then in terms of the biomethane strategy. Where we go with that? Now, it would be we certainly can't speak for the Department for Economy, but we do work very closely. They sit on the project board of this project, so we are working closely with them, and obviously they're very interested in the biomethane aspect of it. So they will be heavily involved. They will be taking, I'm sure, learnings from the Irish National Biomethane Strategy and then moving along that pathway. But that's where they are at the minute with that call for evidence and then taking the findings when that finishes.
Patsy wanted in briefly.
Just very, very briefly. I was trying to recall the name of it, then it came to me. The Green Investment Bank, now I know it went through a transition there and acquisition and all that there. But does it still provide funding for the likes of projects such as this?
I'm honestly not sure, Patsy. There were some discussions a while ago about Green Investment Bank. It's something I could follow up and get back. I'm not sure.
Okay, well, thank you.
Right. Look, it sounds a pretty exciting project, so we wish you well with it. Hopefully it can move reasonably quickly, because it's needed to try and progress the situation, and then even on to the next phase, at which I understand, Jonathan, you saying that obviously there may be other funding, there may be individual business people and companies that will want to get involved, and that would be, I think, the most useful aspect as well, if they can be encouraged into it. Just finally, a quick query. I'm assuming the material is taken off farm to an AD plant. Will that be? Is there any process around the AD plant yet? Will it take mixed goods, or is it only that slurry material?
Well, and if you look at all the different AD plants around the 80 or so around Northern Ireland, they do take different feedstocks. So it would be that some will take food waste, some will take...
yes, some will, but the particular one that you are thinking of, or are you going to a different type of...
No. So some will be existing AD plants, some will be new.
Some will be new.
So but it'll be up to them just to decide, even in terms of that mix. And just one final point, Chair. Some of the European countries, just when we think of that, some of them do stipulate that a certain percentage must come from animal manures. You know, we don't have that. We don't have that here. But
would it be a good idea if we did?
Well, just in terms of dealing with it, just in terms of dealing with the amount, it's certainly a good question to ask.
Okay. William, sorry, quick.
Mr. Chairman, I was thinking if there wasn't some stipulation put in, you know, you could have a number of AD plants and still not been able to deal with the phosphates. So I think it's important that, you know, there has to be some stipulation put in that they have to use so much manure, I would have thought.
Yeah. It would certainly be helpful, and when we tie it in with water quality and the needs in terms of phosphate, we do need to do that.
Okay, Claire and Jonathan, thank you very much for that. Very helpful. Thank you. Okay, members, 2-minute comfort break.
Committee Room 21. Sound. 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 Committee Room 21. Sound.
Darren, thank you. Move on to agenda item 7, which is the SR 2024/115, the Agricultural Student Fees Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2024. Refer you to pages 287 to 299 in your pack. Clerk's memo is at pages 287 to 289. And details of the SR 2024/115 is pages 289 to 299. Committee considered and discussed the SL1 with the dear official on the 2nd of May 2024 and was content that the rule be made. There have been no changes to the policy contents since then. The rule will come into operation on the 1st of September 2024. The proposed SR will amend the Agricultural Student Fees Regulation in Northern Ireland 2023 to provide for an inflationary increase in the level of fees payable for undergraduate and postgraduate higher education courses delivered by DAERA at its College of Agriculture, Food and Rural Enterprise. Examiner of Statutory Rules has not yet reported on the SR, which is subject to negative resolution. We expect her report for next week's meeting. I think Anya had some questions at an early stage, but I think the officials answered those. Okay. Members are content. I'll put the motion that the Committee for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs has considered SR 2024/115, the Agricultural Student Fees Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2024, and subject to the report from the Examiner Statutory Rules, has no objection to the rule. Content? Yep. Okay, thank you. Agenda item 8, Departmental Written Briefing on the Northern Ireland Food Strategy Framework Overview. Members, I refer you to the written briefing from the Department on the Northern Ireland Food Strategy Framework Overview, dated the 10th of May 2024, pages 300 to 305 your pack. The committee is asked to note the briefing and provide any comment if it wishes. For some background information, DAERA has been leading the development of the cross-departmental Northern Ireland Food Strategy Framework to address the strategic food policy gap and to ensure the alignment with similar work ongoing with DEFRA and other devolved administrations. Policy responsibilities extend to DAERA and the Departments for Economy, Communities, Health, Education, Justice and Finance. Although it's led by DAERA, the draft framework has been developed in collaboration with these departments and the Food Standards Agency, NI, Invest NI and other key stakeholders. The draft framework recognises the interconnectedness around food and provides a new whole-of-government approach. It proposes an innovative food systems approach to set a long-term vision, high-level principles and areas for strategic focus to optimise cross-departmental working on food matters to deliver future programme for government and departmental objectives. The revised vision is, and I quote, a transformed, innovative food system that protects and enhances natural resources for future generations, is environmentally sustainable, economically ambitious, and provides safe, nutritionally balanced, accessible food for all. So, members, have we any comments at this stage?
Just a quick one from myself, Chair, and it was in relation to our party response to the consultation at the time. We had raised concerns over the draft food strategy ignoring possible trade deals with, for example, New Zealand and Australia, where there was lower environmental and food standards. So could we maybe get an update to see if that has actually been addressed within the draft strategy at the minute? Okay, so in other words, you're thinking of imports that we may have from some other countries that have been mentioned. You've mentioned a couple, and obviously there are other South American countries, that have potentially lower environmental standards. Yeah. And not only environmental, but health standards as well, maybe, or quality standards, you'd say. Not fair? All agree? Sorry, Michelle. Yeah.
Just in addition to that, obviously there's passing reference to work with Invest NI. It would be interesting to know whether or not there will be financial assistance given from the likes of Invest NI to food companies who are going to be helping to deliver on the strategy, because obviously that's absent in Northern Ireland.
Okay, happy with that? Get that, Jen? Okay, members, happy enough then that we request that information. Okay, agenda item 9 is a departmental written briefing on update on Delran project. I refer you to pages 6 to 14 of the table of papers for this item. As we're aware, the Minister had submitted a written statement to the Northern Ireland Assembly on the 29th of April 2024 regarding this project at Delran, which we considered at our meeting on the 2nd of May 2024. We then requested an oral briefing on the issues covered in the statement. In summary, the Department advises that until the Appeals Commission determines its approach, there is a risk that commentary on the case could be seen as seeking to influence or interfere with the work of the Commission. Whenever that date is set, I think the officials are happy to come and brief us, but in the interim they did provide us with information. I know, Declan, was you that raised this. Do you want to make any?
Yeah, I raised it obviously. We got the response back here now. The department indicated that they didn't provide the correct information at the pre-inquiry, and now as a consequence the overall inquiry is delayed, which is regrettable. So I just think as a scrutiny committee, obviously we have a watchdog responsibility to make sure that any representations coming from the department here are concise and are because this is a matter of big public interest. And I should also declare an interest as well that I also wrote to the PAC, actually wrote making a request that for people to be able to take part in it remotely, because it's a very rural, dispersed area, and a lot of people who have caring responsibilities and accessibility issues and no very poor public transport have difficulty getting to inquiry. So I want to declare that interest. I've made that representation to PAC if it's relevant, Chair.
I'm assuming on the main points of our query, though, and in relation to what the department, I suppose, have failed to do, it may delay the timescale of this PAC and may set it back.
Yeah, it has.
They delayed it.
Sorry?
They have already announced they're delaying it, haven't they?
It
was due to start in September, and they've postponed that already, the start date, so it has been delayed because of this.
But they've no new date set?
No new date set, no. Which is, I think, what the department's response is now. I'd say we're not going to give you an update until the date's been set.
Okay, sorry, Tom.
No, Chair, I did see this and I saw the reasons for it being delayed and so forth. The only concern and difficulty that I have with the whole thing of the delay, first of all, the other departments who were the respondents to it, they had no difficulty with it going on the September 12th of September, I think it was, as it was originally planned for. But the PAC decided to delay this. Now, the difficulty and the problem that I have with the delay is that it's holding back a number of other major applications that has to go through the PA system. If you take, for example, maybe one farm or single one turbines or issues like that are of, or maybe some other bigger development that is of benefit to our economy. And these people are all been held back because PAC are saying, well, we're doing nothing else until we sort out this issue before us with Delran. And now that has been put back again, which pushes everything else back. And it is a matter of concern, and it appears the PAC are not accountable to anyone. And I just don't know how long this is going to be delayed, and the impact that it's going to have on a lot of other developments and businesses, in a sense, that is going to be detrimental to the economy and so forth. So it is a matter of concern, but I suppose we have to wait until we get a verbal briefing from some of these folk, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, well, is there any point in us writing? I think, does PAC lie with under justice?
Yeah, but the justice has no say over them. Although they're funded, the Justice Department doesn't seem to have any say over them.
Is there any point in us writing to PAC and copying in the Justice Committee just to say that this committee is concerned about the delay and the process, even the process as well?
Yeah, it isn't. Chair, it would be. Sorry.
Sorry, no, go on ahead, Declan, you and then William. Take William then.
I think it would be fair to also note that in the correspondence, DERA had indicated that they could provide a means whereby they could proceed with these applications,
yes,
but not delay the published schedule, yes, for the PAC.
The public, but the PAC decided not to.
I think that is the issue where the PAC decided of their own bat they were going to delay it, whereas DERA and the other consultees said that as far as they were concerned, there was no need for a delay. They were happy to go ahead with the hearing as it was scheduled for the 12th of September.
Okay, William?
Tom here was saying that it's impacting on other applications. That seems very unfair. I mean, that'd have been an issue for me. The bottom line is, if they're delaying one, they shouldn't be delaying the rest. Because of that, they should be able to continue with that. I think the committee could have an issue with that. You know,
yeah. I
think it is an issue.
Well, look, Clerk, I'm assuming we're within our right to contact PAC, right, and if we copy in the Committee for Justice, just with that, okay. Thank you. Okay, members, we'll move on to agenda item 10, which is correspondence. You'll find correspondence, the memo, at page 308, and the correspondence is at pages 309 to 314 of your pack, and pages 15 to 112 in the table of papers. Just draw your attention to a couple. Correspondence dated 21st of May 2024, pages 319 of your pack. It's from the Chair of the House of Lords EU Subcommittee on the Windsor Framework. Again, this is copied correspondence to the Minister. Now, I did note in that, no, sorry, it's not to our Ministers, it's the Minister of Biosecurity, Animal Health and Welfare at Westminster. But it seems to be quite critical of the slow response. But anyway, it's only for noting for us. Okay, members, refer you to correspondence dated 22nd of May 2024, page 310 of your pack. It's from the Ulster Angling Federation and a request to brief the committee. Are you happy that we put that on the list of briefings?
Oh, I support that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And I'll declare, Chair, just to, for accuracy, that came to me. It may well have come to other members, but I forwarded it to the committee.
Okay. Yeah, well, one other member spoke to me as well at a meeting up in Long Gallery a couple of weeks ago. Okay. Further correspondence at page 311 of your pack, dated 23rd of May 2024, from the Competition and Markets Authority regarding the launch of its investigation on the supply of veterinary services for household pets in the UK. This follows a consultation on the Competition and Markets Authority provisional decision to launch a market investigation. Happy to note that. I don't think we need to do anything with that, is there? They're not asking us for comment, are they?
No.
Okay. Okay, members, correspondence at page 312 of your pack, dated 23rd of May 24, from the Senior Assistant Clerk of the Windsor Framework Democratic Scrutiny Committee. Copied correspondence from DEFRA regarding the movement of pet birds into a member state from a territory of a third country. Anybody any comment on that?
Yes, Chair.
Yes,
do we have the
sure.
context of this? Because obviously this is just a response. Just giving some details. The fact that there's only 30 certificates for pet birds between January 21 and November 23, but doesn't give us any more information around the initial query and what was being discussed that prompted that. So I don't know whether there's any benefit in getting the
More information
just
what prompted that?
Yeah.
Okay. Happy enough with that, members?
Yep.
Okay. Next item of correspondence I refer to is pages 314 to 315 of your pack, dated 26th of May 2024, from the Investment Strategy for Northern Ireland. It's a copy of their Delivery Tracking System Investing Activity Report for DERA. Any comments? No. Next item is pages 15 to 109 of your table papers, dated 28th of May 2024, from DAERA Corporate Services Division regarding the Locks Agency Annual Report and Accounts, which has been led in the Business Office. May recall that we considered the 2020 and 2021 reports and accounts on the 2nd of May and agreed to add the Locks Agency to our forward work plan for a briefing. So, happy just to note that?
Note, yeah.
Okay. Correspondence on pages 110 to 112 of your table papers, dated 28th of May, from the Clerk to the Committee for Infrastructure regarding the letter dated the 2nd of May 2024 from the Chairperson of the House of Lords European Affairs Windsor Framework Subcommittee to the Parliamentary Under Secretary of State Department for Transport on the proposal for requirements for vehicle design and on management of end-of-life vehicles. Assuming this has came to us because of that issue of end-of-life vehicles and the environmental issues around it, but happy to note it. Okay, and the 15th report of the Examiner of Statutory Rules is in pages 113 to 120. Any other business, members? Agenda item 11? No? Okay, date, time and place for the next meeting is Thursday, 6th of June 2024 in room 21. I would remind you we're starting at 9:15 a.m. Because Minister Muir will be here for a briefing that morning at 9:15. And then we have, I think, the budget.
Yes,
allocations for the department that day as well. Okay. So thank you very much, and the meeting is adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you.
Committee Room 21. Sound.